60th day, I stopped filing position reports. There was no one to file them to. The Velhari Provisional Migration Authority had gone dark on day 31. Their last transmission. A terse acknowledgement that the Ardent Passage had been logged as delayed, and that a search vessel would be dispatched when one became available. That vessel never came. I had watched the acknowledgement number PMA 7741 Vel sit in my outgoing queue for 29 days, unread, while the ship around me continued its slow work of dying. We had left the Vale home system 11 months before, with 4,209 souls aboard. Families, elders, the entire surviving population of the Velhari's fourth colonial branch after the Kethis, atmospheric collapse. We were bound for a transit station 3 systems out, where we would be processed, resettled, given new colony coordinates. 2-month journey. Straightforward, the authority had told us. Routine. The drive coupling on the starboard motivator array failed on day 7. We limped to 60% thrust. The food synthesis units, 3 of the 8, failed on day 19, and we began rationing. The water reclamation system developed a calcium silicate blockage on day 38 that my engineers could slow but not stop. We were losing 1,100 liters per day, and the young, as the young always do in extremity, began dying first. I had 41 children dead by the 60th morning. I knew each name. My communications officer, a young female named Serath, had sent our last distress burst 17 days prior on every open channel we could still reach. The Migration Authority's emergency band, the General Galactic SOS frequency, 2 commercial relay networks, and 1 legacy frequency that our navigation database listed as a Terran, monitoring side lobe, included almost as an afterthought because we had nothing left to lose. The burst contained our coordinates, our manifest, status, and a simple word repeated 3 times in 11 languages: help. The silence after it was the loudest thing I had ever heard. By day 60 I had made my peace with what was coming. Not resignation, I want to be precise about that. I still held my post. I still signed the daily ration Fs and reviewed the engineering reports and walked the family decks every morning so my people could see there, upright and calm. But I had stopped believing the silence would end. There is a particular kind of clarity that comes when you accept a thing. I had found it. I wore it like a second skin. Serath found me on the observation deck at 034 ship time, when the rotations was at its quietest. She did not say anything. She simply held out her comm slate and let me read the screen. It was a response on the legacy Terran frequency. 11 minutes prior, 6 words. Velhari vessel, we are inbound. Hold, I read it 4 times. I was aware that my hands had begun to shake. Surprised me, because I had thought I was done with that. Is it genuine? I asked. I've run 3 verification checks, Serath said. The signal architecture is consistent with Terran military communication protocols. The encryption handshake cleared our legacy key on the first pass. She paused. They filed a flight plan amendment with the Deep Space Relay at Kessel Junction 40 minutes ago. Someone logged it as a humanitarian intercept. How many ships? She looked at her slate again, as though she wasn't quite ready to say the number out loud. The relay logged 4 vessels. Frigate. 2, the classification reads as heavy transport, grain hold configuration. She stopped again. Serath. And a hospital ship, she said. Class 4, full surgical complement. I stood very still for a moment. I had sent 1 distress burst. I had asked, in the plainest terms I knew, for help, any help, whatever could be spared. Passage to the nearest station, water and grain enough to keep us alive until we arrived somewhere. I had not asked for someone. I had not asked for this. How long? I said. Their current approach vector, 6 hours and 40 minutes. I thanked her and told her to wake the senior staff. Then I stood at the observation port for a long time, watching the place in the dark, where 4 ships were moving toward us at speed. Still too far to see, and I tried to find the right word for what I felt. It was not relief. Relief was too small a word. It was something more like the feeling of a bone being set. A sharp, clarifying pain underneath an enormous and sudden rightness, the body remembering that it was supposed to work this way. The TS Caro resolved out of drift at 0941. It was a frigate, lean, dark-hulled, running lights steady, weapons unmounted in the visible hardpoints. It came in at a careful angle that communicated, without any transmission, It was not arriving to threaten. Alongside it and a half-kilometer behind, the two grain transports moved in tandem, massive and unhurried, their hold indicators blinking amber in the standard open cargo configuration. They were enormous. Each one could have carried our entire remaining food requirement for 2 months and left room enough to spare. The hospital ship came last. The Serene Meridian was the largest vessel I had ever seen approach, a ship I was standing on, and I have been a captain for 19 years. It dwarfed the Ardent Passage. It was white. A clean, specific white that seemed to gather what little light existed in the drift and give it back. And its running lights were warm amber, rather than the cool blue of the military vessel. Along its flank, in characters I could read from our observation deck even at this distance, were words in 4 languages. The Valhari translation read, "Mercy Vessel, all wounded welcome." My chief engineer Orith stood beside me. He had not spoken since the ships appeared. He was 71 years old, broad-shouldered male whose crest feathers had gone the pale gray-white of age, and he had survived the Kethis collapse and the long migration and the 60 days of drift with the specific stoic endurance of a man who has learned not to expect good things. He watched the Serene's Meridian come alongside, and then he said, very quietly, "We asked them for a rope to grab onto." "Yes," I said. "They brought a harbor." The Caro's captain hailed us at 293. Her name was Ren Vishar, a compact, precise woman whose face on the comm screen gave nothing away beyond a flat professionalism that I found, in that moment, more reassuring than any warmth could have been. She told me that the Serene Meridian would take our critically ill first, that the grain transports were already cycling their transfer locks, and that her vessel would hold position on our port side for the duration of transfer operations. She said the words the way a person says the morning schedule, calm, sequential, as though none of this were remarkable. "Captain Vishar," I said, "we sent one distress call." "We did not," I stopped, because I was not sure how to finish the sentence without embarrassing myself. "We did not expect this scale of response." She looked at me for a moment. "Your manifest showed 4,000 people," she said. "That's the number we planned for." I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing, and she closed the channel and returned to her work. The Serene Meridian's ramp lowered at 10:11. I will tell you what I saw, and I will try to be precise, because I am a captain and precision is the only tool I have that still works when everything else breaks. The ramp was wide enough for 4 stretchers abreast. The light from inside the ship was warm and even and fell onto our receiving deck in a long pale rectangle, and the first thing that came down it was not people but equipment. Medical carts, folded stretchers, sealed case units of supplies, moving in an orderly procession operated by a small team of human medics in clean gray coveralls. They had done this before. You could see it in the economy of their movement, the way they communicated in short phrases and glances, the way they spread across our deck and began assessing without waiting to be directed. A human, the lead medic, I assumed, a tall male with close-cropped dark hair and a calm that seemed to occupy physical space, came to me directly. "Captain Vel," he said. It was not a question. Someone had briefed him. "Yes, I'm told you have 41 pediatric deaths in the last 30 days and current critical cases across 3 age cohorts." He had a data tablet in his hand, and he glanced at it once. "I need your medical officer and your manifest. We'll triage in the next 40 minutes and start the first transfer." "Of course," I said. "Is there anything about your species' physiology I need to know before we begin? Anything your medical officer hasn't already transmitted?" I thought about it. "Our young have a secondary respiratory passage that can collapse under sustained stress. It looks like choking, but it is not. It was a specific manual technique to clear." He nodded and wrote something on his tablet. "We'll have your medical officer demonstrate the technique before the first pediatric transfer. Anything else?" There wasn't. He thanked me, and he moved on, and his team moved with him, and they began their work. I stood at the threshold of the Serene Meridian's ramp for a long time after that. I had no reason to be there. My senior staff had the operations handled. The grain transfer was proceeding. The medical triage was underway. My engineers were in conference with a Caro technical crew about the water reclamation blockage. Apparently the frigate carried materials. specialist who had seen calcium silicate failures before and had opinions about resolution. I was, for the first time in 60 days, not needed in any critical way. So I stood at the threshold and watched the light coming down from inside the serene meridian, and I watched the humans moving through it, and I counted the things I had asked for, and the things that had arrived. I had asked for help. They had sent a frigate to stand guard over us while we were vulnerable. They had sent 2 grain ships, large enough to resupply a small colony. They had sent a hospital vessel staffed, I would later learn, with 63 medical personnel, who had been pulled from a scheduled resupply station and rerouted within 4 hours of receiving our transmission. 4 hours. We had been drifting for 60 days. And the moment our signal reached a Terran monitoring relay, someone made a decision, and 4 ships changed course within 4 hours. I tried to understand the calculus of that. I could not. Serath came to stand beside me sometime in the second hour of operations. She had been running transfer coordination, and she was tired. I could see it in the set of her shoulder feathers, the slight droop she tried to control. She stood beside me and watched the ramp in silence. "Are 41 names I need to transmit to the authority," I said. "When we file the arrival report." "Yes," she said. "I want them on the record. The ones who didn't make it to this morning, I'll make sure of it." We were quiet for a while. Down the ramp, a pair of medics were carrying a child on a stretcher. One of the critical care cases from the lower family deck, a small female whose crest had gone dangerously pale from malnutrition. She was alive. She was receiving fluids through a line, already running in her foreleg. One of the medics said something to her as they walked, something short and gentle, and the child turned her head toward the sound. "They came for 4,000 people," Serath said. "We are 3,812. 3,868, I said. "Count the ones who were born in drift." She made a note. 3,868. I looked at the ramp. The light from inside was steady and warm, and it did not waver. "Captain," Serath said quietly, "did you know? When you added the Terran frequency to the burst, did you think they might answer?" I considered the question honestly, the way it deserved. "No," I said. I thought I was shouting into an empty room. I added it because we had nothing left to lose, and the frequency was in the database, and it cost us nothing to try. I paused. I did not think anyone was listening. Serath was quiet for a moment. "Someone was," she said. I did not answer her. There was nothing to add to that. The transfers ran for 11 hours. At the end of them, every critical patient was aboard the Serene Meridian. The grain transports had cycled 3 full holds into our storage bays. Enough food for 4 months, not 2. Because apparently that is how humans calculate these things, with a margin built in for everything that might still go wrong. The care material specialist had resolved the calcium silicate block in 6 hours using a solvent compound I had never heard of, and our water reclamation was running at 94% capacity for the first time since day 38. Captain Vashar hailed me one final time at 2200 ship time. The convoy would escort us to the transit station. 3 days at reduced speed to accommodate the Ardent Passage damaged motivator. She said it the same way she had said everything else. Plain, sequential, as if it were obvious. "Captain Vashar," I said. And I heard something in my own voice that I did not entirely expect. "I want to say, you held your ship together for 60 days, she said. "Your people are alive. That's the report I'm filing." She looked at me steadily through the screen. "Get some rest, Captain." The channel closed. I stood on my observation deck for the last time that night, or what served as night aboard the Ardent Passage, and I looked out at the 4 ships, holding position around us in the dark. The Serene Meridian was closest. Its warm amber lights were still on, running steady, and inside it, my people were sleeping in clean bunks with medical lines in their arms and food in their bodies and a ceiling above them that was not slowly failing. I had sent one burst into the silence. I had not believed it would find anything. I was wrong. I think about that word, wrong, and I find that I am not ashamed of it. I was wrong in the best possible direction. I was wrong in a way that gave me back 3,868 lives, including 59 who had been born in the drift and had never known a world that was not that dying ship. Those 59 had never seen a harbor before. They were seeing one now, I watched the serene Meridian's lights until my eyes were tired, and then I filed the 41 names. And then I did what Captain Vashar had told me to do. For the first time in 60 days I slept.